Hey folks, welcome to McFarland's Corner. I'm Mike McFarland, the Lake Fork Guide, giving you a May corner. That's right, a May McFarland's Corner. So this is not a rundown, this is an official corner. In today's corner, we are going to discuss the topic of spooky bass and, in essence, how to approach spooky bass. I'm going to kind of use several different versions or scenarios, if you will. For example, feeding bass versus spawning bass, clear water versus dirty water, deep water versus shallow water. Okay. Quickly, I can tell you that fishing pressure is the #1 reason for spooky bass. There are a few other things. Lightning and weather can make them temporarily spooky. But pressure, high fishing pressure, is the #1 reason that creates spooky bass. All right. But before we do, let's talk McFarland Fishing Journal. The last couple weeks, we're going to give you some of the highlights of McFarland Fishing over the last 2 weeks. So every day has been fair. Roller coaster ride due to winds, weather, north, south, cold fronts that still continue to hit Northeast Texas. The roller coaster is real. Catch them good on one day, can't catch them the next day. 5 bites on Wednesday, 15 bites on Thursday. Just an amazing array of variable up and down weather and unstableness. That's the best way I can get it. We're having fun. We're catching fish. Almost every single day, with the exception of only a few, every trip has had a Lake Fork special at least. Now, Lake Fork special for McFarland Fishing is a 4 to 7 pounder. Anything under 4 pounds is a cookie cutter. 4 to 7 pounder is a Lake Fork special. It's what you come here for. 7 pounds to 10 pounds is a big one. And 10 pounds and above is a double D. Okay? So fishing's been good and, you know, consistent enough and only going to get much better. We are right at our May full moon. There are a ton of fish on beds right now. A lot of fish that you cannot see. Now, I've learned in the last 6 years of fishing Lake Fork, when you find that little lull this time of year that we all have, all the guides, all the fishermen are struggling. I'm not saying ain't nobody catching them out there. There's somebody's going to always catch them. But I mean, just for the norm, it's because there's a bunch of them on beds that we can't see. 4, 5, 6 feet. As soon as this finishes. So this is the moon phase. When this moon phase finishes, those fish will start to do normal things, act like normal bass that feed on a regular basis. Remember, a bass has only got 2 things on its mind: survival and reproduction. During reproduction, they do not eat to eat. But after reproduction, she's hungry. Okay? So, what have we been catching them on? Man, you know, I'm not going to say any names of any clients with the exception of one, but 2. I've got a couple of that I'd like to talk about. Mr. Ed Clark and Miss Rhonda. Man, they've been out with me quite a bit over the last month and a half, and they've experienced this and mostly the downside. But Ed had proposed to Rhonda. And I just thought it was pretty cool. If you've seen the video already, then you know where we're going. But Rhonda, of course, said yes, but jokingly, she put a stipulation that she had to catch a 5 pound or bigger on Lake Fork with the Lake Fork Guide. So we got that done, didn't we, Rhonda? It was pretty cool. And we actually caught that fish on top, but on the Whopper Plopper. Okay, that's right, the river to sea Whopper Plopper. Potentially, that's a great bait for this time of year, but we've been throwing the topwater Vixen. So Reaction Innovation makes, well, That's not fair to say because they don't really make it anymore. But they made a bait called the Vixen. And the topwater Vixen is very famous for calling up a big bite. It has a specific sound, patent sound. There are other baits on the market that will work for what we're doing as well. So it's not just the only bait. But this is going to be the product of the week. And I'm sorry, I'm making the product of the week something you can't get. But it's just been so good to me over my entire lifetime of using it. Ever since I got my hands on this bait, this thing catches big fish. Whether it was a Roosevelt Lake post-spawn bass offshore in Phoenix, Arizona, or here on Fork. The Vixen right there catches them, and we've proven that over the last couple of weeks. When the conditions are right, taking a lot of big fish out on Lake Fork. As I talked about, the variable weather has made fishing go up and down. And mainly for me, I usually love wind, all right? I don't like big wind when I have a topwater bite, especially when I have a main lake offshore topwater bite. I don't like big winds. It messes up the topwater bite. So what have I been doing on those days? And even days when the bass just don't want to seem to eat the topwater. Okay, we are going to just started doing this. It's working pretty fair. But we're going to the Sandtone swim jig, mean green, with a 3-inch Smash Tail Junior as a trailer. Okay, and just, I think it's white ice. I'm throwing this, believe it or not, on the exact same rod combo as I throw the big Vixen. I'm throwing it on 20-pound test Mason's Bass on. And this is the coolest thing about these rods, all right? Without changing a single setting, the difference in this bait and the Vixen is probably more than an ounce. When I cast, there is no difference in the distance. It's absolutely phenomenal. Why? Why does that do that? That doesn't make sense. A 2-ounce projectile and a 1/4 ounce projectile cast the same distance. Folks, I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm just telling you something. McFarland's signatures added to the real-time rods will add more distance, and you can have one setup in some cases that'll throw all your baits. Don't have to even adjust the reel. So that's real-time rods even. The product is phenomenal. Love it. One rod, 2 different styles of bait. All right. How do we fish the swim jig? All right. We actually fish it a lot like a spinnerbait sometimes. In this case, I'm finding the shad spawn, the shad areas. Sometimes it's even still seeing the boils. We just can't throw topwater on them. And we burn it. All right. Burn it through it. It's a get it or don't theory. Okay. The fish either has to take it, chase it, nail it, or forget about it. Don't give them time to look at it. All right, that's where I'm coming from. So the Sandtone 5/16 swim jig in mean green, man, it's been a difference maker. It's really helped the numbers increase on our daily bag. I know that it's a big fish catcher as well. Jason Hoffman in past years has had some double-digit fish on the mean green Sandtone swim jig. So it catches them. And it's a real fun and simple bait to use. Again, throwing it on the same rod, a CB 7'10", 1530. McFarland's signatures added. Okay. Onward. Now we're talking my kind. This is my favorite. And this is what, we're in the journal still, folks. This is what some of the biggest fish, over even the whole month of April, I had to shoot 2 weeks off due to the cancellations. But April 1st, we had a big fish, which is crazy. April Fools. We did. April Fool's Day, we had a big fish. And once I got back to work, the biggest fish of the month, coming on the Sandtone football jig. 3/4 ounce Sandtone football jig. Before I tell you the rod, the reel, the line, and everything, how do we fish it? Well, if you've been following me, you already know what I'm going to say. Shell beds. Deep shell beds. We fish them in deep shell beds that actually wears the paint off that Santone football jig. And I promise you, the Santone products made right here in US of A, that's really hard to do. That's just the nasty abrasiveness of those big clams that I drag that through. It's like sandpaper. It's really, really awesome. Fun bite because the fish come to a shell bed to eat. They don't come there to hang out. It's not structure. They don't eat the clams. The clams live in a high productive area of plankton. The shad come to eat the plankton. The bass come to eat the shad. Our biggest fish over the month of April have come from a shell bed on a Santone football jig. They've been few and far between because we're having a very mild and very slow progressing spring. And there are very few fish that are spawn out and offshore in feeding patterns. We're not hot enough. So this bite is coming. This is going to be the May bite. May, and it'll go late into June like last year. And when this bite starts, it's the very best bite for McFarland fishing of the year. It's the most simple bite. And it becomes quite consistent. Remember, the hotter the water, the more often the fish have to eat. Higher metabolism. It's a cold-blooded creature. So we get in the upper 80s, they're eating more often. They're eating once, twice, 3 times a day. Okay? That's very important. What do we throw this on? I was throwing my jigs on the MB 7'3", 1225. I decided that during the month off, I kind of took a reevaluation of all the stuff that I've been doing, and I recognized that the jig rod wasn't enough. And what I mean is these fish that we're going to get into here in the next 6 to 8 weeks will all be big ones, Lake Fork specials. Okay, there'll be days when we have 5-pound fish back to back to back to back. When they are spawning, when they're in the shallows and they're in spring, they're scattered all over the lake. When they finish that, they begin to move out because it gets too hot. The bait comes first. The bait begins to move offshore. The bait begins to feed on plankton in these shell beds. The bass begin to visit the shell beds to eat. The only reason they're there is to eat. That makes the fishing a whole lot easier. It also makes it a whole lot more condensed because once they come out of the backwater, all the scattering becomes condensed. There's only so many offshore places they can go. There's only so many main lake points and humps and channel swings that are deep enough, etc. Okay, so now you begin to have these fish bunching up offshore, and that's why we've only had a few bites because we only have few fish out offshore. Throwing this Santone in through the shell beds, most of the time I like to set up and drag uphill because it really makes more havoc in the shell. I'm throwing this on a new rod that I just had Louis make for me, and it's a 7MB, an MB 7'3", 1530. Okay, I upped it. This is a 6 power. This thing is bad. It is a rocking, super duper powerful rod that's going to rip the lips right off a bass. I'm not going to have any of these fish get away from us anymore because I've stepped up to a high speed Tatula 8-to-1 gear ratio. All right, a lot of these big fish, when we hit them, they rise immediately and they're coming out 20 feet of water and they rise, boom, and they jump and throw the jig. Well, with a high-speed gear ratio and a 6-power rod, I do not believe they're going to escape us any longer. So this is the Daiwa Tatula 100 XS. I've got 20-pound fluorocarbon, Cigar Red Label, all right? Cigar Red Label is probably not the best line if you're a tournament fisherman. If I was competitive, I would be using Sunline, Sunline Super, and Sunline Sniper. Because I'm a guide, that stuff's expensive. I just change this more often. But the Cigar Red Label works perfectly fine if you'll change it more often. That's all you have to do. Change it more often, okay? So that's the jig. I like, again, to drag it uphill, jamming through them shell beds. We do throw it a little bit here and there anyways. We throw it on some main lake points in some wood and some deep broken up timber. The football jig is a deadly bait. The Santone football jig, made in the USA, is the one I suggest you use. Catch a lot of big fish on it. All right, guys, we're still in the journal. I know this is a long journal, but by request, I had a subscriber, asked for a little more detail. And I told you that when I do the daily rundown, they're going to be brief. In the corner, the journal part of the corner, I will explain to you in more detail. All right? Like this. This is coming. Santone Piglet football shaky head. Stand-up shaky head. Okay, so the shaky head bite's coming real soon. And I want to get you in some real detail. This is very important. I choose the stand-up because I really like to fish with the Zoom trick worms. I'm going to pick, at first, brim colors. Watermelon candy, green pumpkin, watermelon seed. I'm going to do the tail chartreuse. Okay? I want the 5/16 Santone stand-up football piglet. And it, for me, imitates a fish head down, busy. Okay? This is how it sits on the bottom. Okay? Upright. So if I drag this uphill, let me use this arm. This arm's like this. This bait's going to stay upright the whole presentation, all the way back to the boat. If I cast this the opposite way, have the boat offshore and cast in, gravity will let this bait fall and roll over as I pull it. It won't stay head down, standing up tall. I hope I'm conveying what I'm trying to teach you. So in the journal, we are using and have been catching some fish already on this. This bite's up and coming very, very soon. Offshore, brush piles, offshore, shell beds. But turn around, drag the thing uphill a little bit. The presentation's so much better. You will get bit a whole lot more, and it will challenge your skills to keep you from getting stuck. So you'll improve your fishing skills. What do we throw this on? This one's being thrown on the MB 7'3", 1225, okay, 5-power rod. This was what I was using as a jig rod before. I always add the McFarland's signatures. Real-time rods makes custom rods. Real-time rods has a stock base. From the stock base, I have tweaked and added the McFarland's signatures. We talk about it all the time. It makes a big difference, and it makes the rod gain a good 20 to 30 feet in casts. The guides, the microwave guides, are indestructible except they get stepped on. There's no ceramics to be busted out. This is all titanium tip. Okay, so it's really, really good quality stuff. That's what you get when you fish with McFarland Fishing. They're throwing the shaky head on the MB 7'3", 1225, which is like the 5-power. Okay, 20 pound fluorocarbon, same thing. Remember, I don't go less than 20 pound. I do have a finesse rig or two. Finesse rigs will throw down to 15 pound. My chicken rig or my finesse Carolina rig is 15 pound with a 12 pound leader, and I get nervous every time we throw it. Every time we throw it. All right, so product of the week. Man, this is a tough one for me, guys. I'm going to give you 2 products of the week. The reason is this week, the one that I really want to make the product you can't get, and that's the Vixen. Really, this has been the product of the last couple weeks. It's been the game changer for me. Got a lot of good fish on it, a lot of Lake Fork specials, and but the Reaction Innovation, you can order it. It'll be back ordered forever, and I just don't suggest you try it because you probably won't get it. They just don't make them anymore. So I'm going to do a labeling that the product of the last couple weeks, but for the sake of something you can get your hands on, I'm going to tell you a really, really cool thing. This is the truth, some good testimony. We're talking scent. The product of the week is Magic Reaction. What is Magic Reaction? Well, Magic Reaction is a scent additive for your soft plastics made for real-time rods by an incredible biochemists. Okay, let me just tell you a little bit about scent. I've been a scent believer all my life. Okay, bass don't post up on a bait so they can see it cross-eyed. If you've ever done a demonstration or watched it in the tank, they post up on baits before they take it sometimes. Soft plastics, okay? They don't want to see it cross-eyed. Do they search with their nose or like catfish do? Smells downstream, turn them on? No. But I do believe that they smell very well. And science has proven that, or you wouldn't have Berkley Baits. Berkley Baits has a package that says catch 45% more fish. Do you see that? Do you realize that they have to prove that, or it's false advertising? It's true. That's why it's on there. I'm supporting it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Berkley Power Bait catches more fish. Okay. But what about all the baits that are out there that you have, that I have, that don't come already made like that, with that already impregnated? The neat thing about Berkley is the smell is not all appealing to you and I, but they're never oily. They're not greasy. They don't stain things. It's made with real fish. And sometimes it smells that way. I've been a scent believer since I was 10 years old. And I've gone through everything from Bass Candy to Bang Spray to I can go get it. Bottles and they turn brown, and Smelly Jelly used to be my favorite. And all of it was oily because it was derived with real fish oils, real crawfish oils. And it stained and it rotted, and it never was appealing to you and I. Definitely not. Magic Reaction by Real Time Rods. The very first additive for soft plastics that has no oil whatsoever, leaves no residue or nasty mess. And listen to me, folks. Just like Berkley says, Berkley puts it on the package. You're going to hear it from my voice, from Michael McFarland, the Lake Fork guide. I guarantee you catch 50% more fish. You'll get bit more. The fish will hold the bait more. It'll be deeper, better hook sets. Once again, I guarantee it. And here's my favorite part. This is a chemical reaction. That's why it's called magic reaction. There are no oils. There are no fish scents. This biochemist made the most incredible additive that I've ever seen, where I can take a plastic bag of worms that smells like plastic, smells like Pyresol plastic, add 1/8 of the bottle, hit it with 1/8 the bottle of salt, and a chemical reaction between the liquid and the salt makes it impregnate in the plastic. They are dry. They leave no residue. And unlike power bait, brother, I'm going to tell you what. Sometimes it almost smells like I want to eat it. It smells like a crawfish from Bros. I'm not joking. There is a smell to this that's fake. It's not even real. It's a chemical reaction by a very super incredible chemist or biologist. A wow factor. So here's how you use it. Get yourself a bottle. They don't come marked, all right? A bottle does 8 bags of plastics. What I do is just take a black pen and mark the middle, then the middle, then the middles. You'll have 8 marks. 1/8 of a bottle, 1/8 in the bag, 1/8 of salt. Mix it all together. Set it overnight. In the morning, it will blow your mind. True testimony. This is how and why I can give you the conviction I'm giving you. One of my very best friends, Mr. Paul Matthews, When I fished with Paul Matthews, and I used to tour and fish a lot of tournaments with Mr. Paul, he hated this fact that I brought scents on his boat because they're nasty, oily. Boy, you got that junk on my boat. And I could never, ever, ever, in the years that I fished with him, make him become a believer. Well, Mr. Paul Matthews buys more of this right now than anybody I know. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona. He buys it to share with all his buddies. He gets the big bottle, and they are ate up with it. Guaranteed, right here, Michael McFarland. Get you some magic reaction. Learn how to use it in your non-scented baits that you got. I'm using it on everything now. I'm even doing it on big swim baits. I had the UV guy, UV Light, Mr. Brett Ware. He gave me some bomb swim baits but this guy right here, this thing is so awesome. They call it, my eyes are getting really bad. I remember right, this thing is a sow belly, okay? That big old sow belly is an awesome swim bait, but it's soft plastic. When I got it, it smells like Pyrosol plastic. Not anymore. That's right. All right, so we're having fun yet. We're still in the journal. The journal's a little bit long because I haven't done one in a couple of weeks at least. I think, as a matter of fact, I think a whole month since we've done an actual McFarland's Corner. All right, that does conclude the journal. That's got you a product of the week, real-time rods, magic reaction, and the Vixen catching big bass, baby. Onward. You ready for the topic? Spooky bass. Spooky bass and how to approach them. All right. Well, first of all, what creates a spooky bass? Let me just tell you, the number one reason, in my opinion, that bass becomes spooky is pressure. All right. I have witnessed places that have never been fished before. Small ponds, small rivers, trout fisheries, bass fisheries, irrelevant. In those places, you can spit on the water and the fish will come out of curiosity to see what it is. I'm flashing back to a child trout fishing, and I run out of grasshoppers. I couldn't catch any more grasshoppers, but I found a cigarette butt, Marlboro red cigarette butt. And I remember I peeled the brown paper from the butt. It had that white whatever filter. And I flashed in my mind, if I put that on the hook and I fish it fast enough, it should white flash in the water. It should fool the fish. And it worked. Non-pressured fish. So for me, in my whole lifetime of fishing, that's what it's all about. Pressure makes them spooky. Another quick analogy. I have a lake that I grew up on, Lake Pleasant, Phoenix, Arizona. A river arm closes. 6 miles of the lake gets closed for 6 months. I'm sorry, it's not 6 miles. It's several miles for 6 months. During that time, those fish get up in there. They're unbothered. It's closed for an eagle closure. Usually when they open that up for the first 3 days to a week, it's unbelievable fishing. You catch them on multiple colors. Find a group of fish and you catch them on red worm, blue worm, and a black worm. By the end of the week, you can't buy a bite. Fishing pressure. So what makes a fish become spooky? The fisherman. That's the first thing to recognize to fix any scenario. All right, now let's get those scenarios. Let's first of all talk about like regular feeding bass, okay? You're on a main lake point and you're throwing a crankbait and you start to catch a few and the bite turns on real good for a half an hour and you and your dad catch 10 fish and then the bite lulls. Did the bite quit or did the fish get smart and get spooky? Quite possibly either or, but most likely there's still fish there and they've just got shy and spooky. So the first thing you can do, just for something to do, is change. Change a bait up on them. Change the angle up on them. A lot of times if you're using a reaction bait, spinner bait, square bill, top water, crankbait, whatever, a moving bait, then the answer is to slow down and toss them a Texas rig worm or a weightless Cinco. So the very first thing is to recognize why these fish stopped biting. All right, they were feeding, now they quit. Were they fish that pulled up out of deep water on a point and now they've left? That's not spooky anymore. They're not there anymore. All right, were they shad spawn fish? The shad's still there and they're there, but they're now just kind of holding. They're not doing anything because 2 boats came in, 5 boats came in and are bombing top water lures on them. That's pressure and that's spooky fish. And I think you can kind of answer yourself what to do. Stealth. Stay away. Leave. Come back. Long distance. Keep distance. Now that's going to be the answer. 99% of what I say here is stealth. The answer every time is to leave, come back, stealth. With a few minor adjustments, tweaks, and changes, there is no other answer. All right? Now, there are some things to do. And let's talk about it. So high pressure is what creates it. All right? Let's talk about like spawning bass. The same thing, man. The first time the bass get on beds, man, they're so easy to catch. And by the end of the week, they get tougher and tougher to catch. Sometimes they won't even let you point at them anymore. They're gone. Back to stealth. Well, how do you do that, Mike? Well, now you got to start using tact. Maybe you go find the fish first, make a mark with your waypoint, and then come back from a distance. I can tell you a #1 tip on catching a really big bedfish is if you see a bedfish on Monday, big female, maybe you fished for her and couldn't catch her. Go back the next day at the crack of dawn from a long distance and throw a topwater popper and hang on. Stealth, okay? Any scenario I paint for you is pretty much going to be answered by figuring out a way to come in on that fish. Stealth, all right? Clear water versus dirty water, all right? Clear water. Lake Mead, for example, crystal clear lake. Fish are in 45 feet of water. I get right on top of them and vertical drop right into them. After a certain amount of time, they get used to the boat presence. You can no longer do that. The boat's hovering over them. Okay, they get used to that. In dirty water, I don't see that happen. So dirty water, I get a lot closer to the fish. But in dirty water, now I'm so much closer to the fish, the things that spook them are the sounds. Okay, so now my footsteps in the boat. Now the sonar pinging in the back shallow waters, or the live well running, humming. Okay, that creates the factor that spooks the fish in dirty water. All right, so that's clear water versus dirty water. Usually in clear water, if you can see the fish, they can see you. I have a saying on the West Coast, if I can see the fish, I can catch the fish. People say, what? I say, yeah, if I can see the fish, I guarantee you I'm going to catch the fish. What I don't tell them is that I'm going to leave, come back first. That's my point. If I see him, I know where he came from. He came out of them rocks right there. I saw it. So I can leave and come back stealth. If I saw the fish, I'm going to catch the fish. That's a West Coast philosophy. Sometimes we used to just go throw big swim baits because they come out of the rocks. I saw you. That's all I'd say. Hit waypoint. I saw you. I'm going to come back with a drop shot and catch that sucker. All right. Stealth. Stealth is the answer. Clear water versus dirty water. Even more distance. Lighter line. Okay, not because they see it. The bait has a different presentation. They've got a better view of the bait. In dirty water, they're dependent on lateral lines, vibrations, sounds. In clear water, they got good eyesight. So lightening the line, getting away from 20-pound testing crystal clear water down to 10-pound, and the presentation looks more natural. That's what lighter line does. Makes a natural presentation. All right. How about, I talked about clear water versus deep water. I talked about shallow water versus deep water. I mean, clear water versus dirty water. Shallow water versus deep water, really the same exact thing. When I'm on shallow fish, I'm quiet. I try and get away from the trolling motor. You go in we got spot lock trolling motors. You go in the back of a cove, real small cove, and spot lock, you're just echoing the whole cove. Power pull down, shh, quiet. All right, I'm going to give you a couple of quick scenarios. One of them is really cool. Mr. Lee Livesey, Lake Fork guide, BASS Elite. One of the very best fishermen I think I've ever met in my life, for being a young man that he is. Up and comer, but the real deal. And I promise you, superstar coming. I see him in the MLF. I'm making to the MLF. But enough patting his back. He's the real deal. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. Well, he made a really cool post a week back, and he talked about pulling up into a ditch, a man-made ditch. And it was a dark ditch on the Humminbird 360 scan. That's what you could see is the dark ditch. You wouldn't think there's any fish in there. They fished for fish in there because they didn't get bit. They would have thought there's no fish in there. But on the Humminbird 360 scan, they saw the shadows of the fish coming out of the ditch following their baits. So the fish were shy. They were too close to them. Fish knew they were there. Fish were following the swim baits back to the boat. It was an incredible post. Thanks for sharing, Lee. I hope you don't mind me using this as a teaching lesson. Well, Lee made in the post, he said, look, we saw the fish follow. We recognized they were there. We left, came back, stealth, power pulled down, and caught them all. All right. Thanks, Lee. But that goes right into the lesson that I'm teaching. Spooky bass. How to approach. If you think your bass are spooky, do your very best to be quiet. Think deer hunting. Change your approach. All right. Change your approach. You could be part of the problem. Now I'm going to end you with one more pretty cool story that sometimes there's just nothing you can do. Lake Fork's the highest pressured fishing lake in the whole entire world. I find bass here in the next month with a sonar and turn around, throw in them, and we catch them. After a few weeks of that, they get used to that, where they won't let me graph them anymore. And I just have to start fishing those spots. If I graph over the fish, they leave. It's the boat presence and the graph. They just won't take that anymore. They're that not smart, because they're not smart, but they're that conditioned. Just like your dog, they learn what to do, what not to do. They're doing it for survival instincts. This is one of my favorite stories from one of my favorite fishermen, Mr. Johnny Geis. Mr. Johnny Geis fishes for a little bit of everything out on the lake. And Johnny Geis will take live bait out for those big bass. And sometimes he puts a hurting on them. And Johnny Geis has gotten into the Garmin live scope and gotten pretty good with it. And it's really unique. That live scope is live. It's now. You see the fish actually swimming now. It's just a wow factor if you haven't seen it. It's live. They can watch the crappie come try and get their bait and take it away from the crappie. I didn't want to catch that one. That one's too small. Pick the fish they choose to catch. It's incredible. Well, Johnny shared this story with me. He said, Mike, I had some guys that wanted to catch big bass. So I got myself some brim. I went out, I sonared some big bass, dropped into the big school, pow, 9-pounder right off the get. Folks, this actually was something I witnessed. Now watch this happen. The story was told to me later in detail of what really went on. I saw them catch the first 9-pounder. Then they got completely set up, got the spot lock trolling motor going, got the live scope going, and dropped all their baits. There were 6 men fishing. Big 24-foot Ranger Bay boat. There were 6 lines hanging with 6 brim, live brim. 12 big bass circled around these 6 lines dropped in. Occasionally, one of those big bass would come up to the brim. You seeing this on the sonar. All these men are looking in the sonar. They're not looking over the side of the boat. They're looking into the sonar. On the sonar, they would see a big bass approach, and I could hear them say, oh, here we go, here we go. And the big bass would approach the brim would freak out, and the big bass would leave. After about 15 minutes, Johnny told one of them, hey, why don't you lift that brim up and let it go back down? When they did, all 12 bass took off and never came back. Folks, that's a live bait on a hook. And they were smart enough to not eat it. Conditioning. Lake Fork is most definitely the most highest pressured fishing lake in the world. Don't expect to just come here, toss a line, and catch a bass. Bass fishing is an art. How good you get is truly up to you. And that's a quote from one of the very best there ever was. In fact, the best, Mr. Ricky Clunn. Rick Clunn, thank you for that. It's a fact. Bass fishing is an art. Lake Fork is a challenge. We do catch them. We catch them well here. They are spooky bass here quite often. To the gentleman that asked for that topic, thank you. I sure appreciate you making that request. Great topic. I hope that I've done my best to really kind of paint a picture. Spooky bass sometimes are very difficult. You have to try and think distance. You have to be patient. Sometimes you just have to stay with it. All right, I'm going to leave you with that. If you stay with it, grind on them. We grind every day, and a lot of times it's the grind. It's the grind that finds the success. So, man, tell you what, guys, everything's been really, really, really fun. I got a couple tips for you. The tip of the week is, you know, you've been fishing a top water bite and a fish misses your bait, pick up a Cinco, throw it back up there. You might catch that fish. The same thing after that, after you've had a big blow up area, like right now you're going to see surface blow ups. Once you've had an area that really starts to go, it gets crazy, and then it calms down and stops, don't leave. Put those reaction baits away and pick you up a Cinco, a Texas rig, a jig, because that's when the big bass come in. They're lazy, they're crumb eaters, and they'll come looking for crumbs. So don't always just chase the boils. Give those boils 15, 20 minutes after they happen. Throw something down underneath them. That's going to be a tip for you. Man, I appreciate everybody watching. If you enjoyed the show, give me a thumbs up. If you have any ideas for future shows, if I left something out, if you were confused, you didn't quite get it, you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. I love you. I appreciate you all watching. I'm Michael McFarland, the Lake Fork Guide, giving you a corner. That's right. I'll see you tomorrow with a rundown.